Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melisa Caprio.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. How is everybody doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. It's my favorite day of the week, Wednesday, when I get to do my show. And today I have a really cool guest. Her name is Susie Hayes. She's a psychotherapist and author of Freed from Stuck. That's the title of her book, Freed from Stuck. We're going to talk about that today. And she's going to join me in just a moment. So for those of you who are tuning into my show for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are here every week, thank you for coming back and listening to the show live, and also for listening to the replays of the show. I really appreciate it. But for those of you who may just be listening to me for the first time, a little bit about me. I am a photographer and I'm also an author, and I have a book, and it's titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And in my book, there are 30 manifesting stories along with the photographs that I took of the contributors manifesting postcards. And I also include in the book, which I thought was really fun to do, a bunch of exercises that helps us get clear on what we want to manifest. Because sometimes we're not quite sure. We'll say, well, I want to be happy. And you'll say, well, what does happy look like to you? And you don't really have a clear understanding of what that is. We've all been there, right? We just want to feel a certain feeling. So the writing exercises really help us get clear on what it is specifically that we want to manifest. And there's also a toolbox full of exercises on how to manifest love and money, health, career, and much, much more. So if you are interested in doing the inner work exercises and reading people's incredible journeys of transformation, inspiration, and manifesting, you can go to your favorite bookstore and purchase a copy either in the store or online. And if they don't have it in the store, you can ask for them and they will order it for you. I am also always asking people to keep sending me manifesting postcards, and they're kind of like a little mini vision board. And if you want to know how to make one, I lay it out on my website on postcardstotheuniverse.com. There's a little section. It tells you how to create one, and if you sign up for my newsletter, you get that in your email right away, and you also get another little free gift. It's a 30-day manifesting gift. So if you're on Facebook, you can join me in my public Facebook group, Postcards of Love, and I share uplifting posts, images, and all that kind of good stuff. And you can also follow me on any social media. I'm all over the place, Postcards to the Universe. I'm going to be out of town for a couple weeks, but I will be returning September 14th with my guest, Bran Katanik, and he's a podcast host and author. Bran is a personal empowerment expert. He has been a teacher and a mentor with a meditation-based approach and his background in the healing arts. He facilitates online workshops and works with individuals and groups, teaching them tools that will help them to be grounded, confident, and to have more clarity and insight when moving forward in life. So join me on September 14th when I am back with Bran, but the next couple weeks, we're going to have some good replays up so you can listen to those too. All right, now to get to my guest today, Susie Hayes. She helps people become freed, F-R-E-E-D, from stuck by showing them how to access internal resources they never knew they had, to create what they never knew they could, combining coaching, counseling, and hypnosis. She is also a speaker, a teacher, an award-winning author of the book titled Freed from Stuck, Dare to Cross the Bridge Beyond Grief, Trauma, and Self-Sabotage to Discover Lasting Change Now. As a registered psychotherapist, Susie is a member of the International Board of Clinical Practitioners and the Colorado Association of Psychotherapists. She is a certified sex therapist, life coach, and business coach. She holds 2 certifications in hypnosis and a master practitioner in Neuro-Linguistic Programming. She also has several certifications in energy psychology, including Reiki, Theta Healing, and Resonance, Alchemy. And you can find out more about her if you go to her website, Susie, Susie Hayes, Hayes, now.com. Welcome, Susie. Thanks for being here with me today.
It is a delight, Melissa. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't say resonance. I don't know why. I was saying Renaissance. You do
That's
a lot.
All right.
You do a lot. You have a lot going on, which is really cool. I like that.
Thank you. I have a lot going on and a little bit of alphabet soup behind my name.
Wow, that's great. Well, okay, so I always like to ask my guests before we dive into the meat of what your book's about and what you do, how did you get into this kind of work?
Well, originally I was in the field of education, and I made a shift over to counseling, and that really came out of my own journey of going into therapy and really finding such value in the experience that I wanted to do that. And so I finished my master's in education and then went on to get an additional master's in counseling, and I opened up my private practice, and I was also involved in opening several counseling centers in the Denver area. And it was several years ago that I ran into a colleague, and I asked him, well, what are you doing these days? And he said, I've got a publishing company. And he said, I bet you have a book in you. And I said, oh, no. I have never wanted to make a book. I have watched people be tortured in that process. And he said, well, give me an hour and a half and I'll find that book. And I said, okay, fair enough, an hour and a half. So out of that conversation, what we discovered was that in all of the various ways I had been investing my energy, it was really about helping people become freed from stuck. So we wrote the book, and the FREED actually became an acronym for the 5 elements that I discovered were consistent and necessary to really become and stay freed from stuck.
Okay, so then I guess the follow-up has to be, what are those 5 elements for the FREED method?
Yes, well, we used the image of crossing a bridge from stuck to freed from stuck. And so if you can imagine that, the F is for face the bridge, which is really about identifying the real problem, which really has to do with the pain point or the need that is not met, the desire that we're looking for in terms of improving our quality of life. The second element, R, is recognize the bridge, which is about looking across the bridge to the destination. What is it that we really want? And you were mentioning earlier how important it is to have clarity about that, and you provide some tools for that. And part of what's important in this step is that the more vivid that picture is and the more emotionally charged it is, it then gives us fuel to make that journey of crossing the bridge. The E is embrace the bridge, and what that is identifying the blocks and the obstacles, both externally and internally, that are keeping us from living the quality of life that we want. And then to develop a plan, a strategy that works to begin to take action to move across that bridge. The fourth element is exit the bridge, and this is one that is often not really focused on very much because it's really about grieving. It's about letting go of what is no longer serving us. And as humans, grieving is the most difficult human task. And to the degree that we love is the degree that we grieve. And so the more we are attached, the harder it is to let go. But we really must be able to do that in order to allow ourselves to transform and to change. And then D, of course, is arriving at the destination. This is about accomplishing the goal, changing the pattern that isn't working for us, achieving what we're wanting to achieve, attracting to ourselves what we want. And in that process of arriving at the destination, it is also about potentially discovering our destiny. And by that I mean, as we are transforming, we become acquainted with more of who we really are, of our core values, what our purpose is in life, and what brings us joy. And so that's so very important as we arrive at that place that we appreciate that deeper transformation, the potential for that deeper transformation that takes place. And then I talk a little bit about the importance of accountability, which is not about having someone or a system in our life that polices us, but rather those who come alongside of us and support us with truthful compassion and encourage us to continue to move forward in our lives. And what we always know is that when we've crossed a bridge, there will always be another bridge. There will always be another point where we're going to get stuck and we're going to have to figure out how to move forward. But if we have an understanding of the process of how to do that, it makes it easier for us to continue to grow and expand in our lives.
That's super interesting. You know, I was wondering, and you say this in your, when I was reading about your bio, and you talk about this, why do so many of us self-sabotage? Like we'll be on a path, we're doing really, really good, and something will come across our path that we know we shouldn't, maybe go there, but we do. We self-sabotage our success, or, many of us are guilty of procrastination, right? We say we want something, we want to get to a certain place, but then we put it off, we procrastinate and procrastinate. Why is that it's almost like it's like in our DNA, humans. Why do we do that?
Well, I would say that it is a universal experience. And it's why I really focused in the book on those elements, because we all share that. We all have experiences of trauma. We all have experiences of self-sabotage. We all have experiences of procrastination. And I would suggest that the self-sabotage really, it can come from any number of beliefs that we have. But it is fear-based. It is in our human experience that if we are moving in a new direction, if we're making a change, and particularly if there is uncertainty in that, which of course in change there always is, we often can be afraid of that, and so sometimes we will do something that puts the brakes on. The other piece, I think, Melissa, that is very common with self-sabotage has to do with an experience inside of ourselves where we question whether or not we deserve what we desire. And if there are beliefs either at a conscious level or a non-conscious level that we might not deserve the desire of our heart, very often we will sabotage ourselves. We'll return to what is familiar, which is not necessarily comfortable, but if it's familiar, we know how to navigate it. So self-sabotage is a self-protection, as is procrastination. Procrastination sometimes is just that we are afraid of taking the steps that we need to take. very often it's about feeling overwhelmed. It's about feeling like we're on overload and that there's just one more change, one more task just feels like it's too much. And so that provides an opportunity for us when we're procrastinating to really look at what we're desiring and seeing if we don't need to go back to our plan or our strategy or our commitment and say, do I need to back this up? Do I need to take smaller steps? You know, the story of, you know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Sometimes we need to slow down and chew. Sometimes we need to step back and ask, should I really be chewing on this elephant? Sometimes we should say, do I need to take smaller bites? And so whenever we're procrastinating, it's a signal that we are experiencing some apprehension or anxiety or uncertainty about what it would mean to move forward and attend to whatever that is that we know at some level would serve us well.
Yeah. I mean, I've been guilty of procrastinating myself, and I really try to be conscious of that. And I do agree with you on the non-deserving. I think a lot of us don't think we deserve what it is that we really desire. And that's, it's interesting because like you talk about in your book about how to become freed from grief, loss, and trauma. And I want to talk about that. But I think before we do, we're going to be coming up to the break in just 30 seconds anyway. So let's take our break here and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that and we'll dive into that. Stay tuned, guys. Be back in just a couple minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The rainbow is God's promise of hope for you and me. And though the clouds hang heavy and the sun we cannot see, we know above the dark clouds that fill the stormy sky, hope's rainbow will come shining through when the clouds have drifted by. Teresa Caprio is the president and founder of Rainbow Guardian Inc., a nonprofit 501c3 serving the intellectually challenged/developmentally disabled, including autism. Teresa started the foundation in 1995 so she could help make a better life for her intellectually challenged daughter. Her dream is that the Rainbow Guardian will provide the necessary tools and education to help the public understand the special needs population, because it's often discarded in mainstream society. To find out more or make a donation in support, please go to www.rainbowguardian.org. Rainbow Guardian's special mission is to see these unique people live a happy, full life and have a future of liberty and equality.
Welcome back. So if you're just joining me today, I have a special guest, Susie Hayes, on, and we're talking about the work that she does. She wrote a book called Freed from Stuck, and she's also a psychotherapist. So before the break, we were talking about why we all seem to procrastinate when we really want something, right? It's like, it just, so many of us do that. And you know what? Even kids do it, I noticed. My niece, she's only 12, and she's always been a big procrastinator.
Well, that's not so unusual.
No, it's not.
You know,
okay.
It speaks to her level of anxiety, probably. That she's, you know, some children are just a little more extroverted and courageous and rambunctious, and others are more tentative. And so she may kind of drag her feet a little bit because she's a little bit apprehensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it may be that way. I don't know. You know, kids trying to get them to do stuff. But we were going to talk about, because you talk about this in your book, so many of us have grief. Actually, I'm going through grief right now because I recently lost my sister. And so a lot of us are experiencing grief, loss, and trauma. So we have to go through, obviously, we have to go through the process. We can't just skip over grief. It just doesn't happen. So, but how do we not stay stuck there? How do we move beyond that?
It's a really good question. The grief of life. And when we experience a loss, inevitably we grieve at some level. And to be able to move through grief is to understand, first of all, that it's such a messy process. You know, it's not clean, it's not linear, it's not simple. We often talk about, you know, the stages of grief and what that's like, but the reality is that it's more spiral than linear, which means that sometimes we'll feel angry, sometimes we'll feel sad, sometimes we'll feel better and we'll think, oh, I'm through that, and then all of a sudden something will happen.
Yeah.
So part of what is so important in grieving is to be prepared to know that grief and those waves of grief are going to come, and often unexpectedly, and to be compassionate and patient with yourself in that, because it's really about honoring that person in your life. It's about honoring the relationship that you have, and it's just about the sadness that you feel in not having that physical connection with them.
Yeah, and many of us stay in that space for some forever. Some people are grieving forever, you know, and I always wonder, what are they getting out of it? You know, like, for example, like say you lost somebody, but now, you know, a whole decade has passed, but you still can't function and you're still in that deep sense of grief. Are they getting something out of staying there? Are they getting attention? Or maybe they just want to isolate, you know? What do you think about that?
You know, that's a really good question. And I think that grief is something that we really never get over. Sometimes with the passing of time, hopefully with the passing of time, the the sadness is less intense and that there is a softening in the process.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes people get stuck in the grief, and it can be for any number of reasons.
Because I want to go into this, because I really want to talk about vision and having dreams and having hopes and how that helps us become unstuck, and that helps free us from that feeling of being stuck. So can you share a little bit about what you tell us, or you give us tools or tips on what we should do about that?
Yes, it's really important that we have as clear as possible a vision of what we believe our life is going to be like when we are at that point of being freed from stuck.
Okay.
And the more vivid it is, the more emotionally charged it is, the more energy can be used to help us cross that bridge, because when the journey of crossing that bridge happens, sometimes the wind blows and sometimes the rain comes. And if we're not focusing on that destination and have a clear picture in our mind, sometimes we can retreat or become discouraged in that process. And I sometimes say for people, they go, well, I don't really visualize that much. I don't see pictures in my head, or I don't have dreams. And I often say, what you're really wanting to connect with is the emotional experience. So if you can connect with how that feels in your body, the physiology, if you can feel how your heart opens up, the joy that you feel, how your body fills with energy, and you relax and you feel strong and you start to feel excited and you start to feel like you can take action and celebrate what the change is going to be, then you know that you're activating your brain and your nervous system to be able to move forward and take the action.
Yeah. Well, that's why I have people that create the manifesting postcards, because it's not really about what the postcard is. It's about the energy that you tap into when you're creating it, right? You're dreaming, you're thinking, you're imagining. So that's really where the power is as far as when you want to manifest something. So yes, I know exactly what you mean. And what happens is once we start doing it, it feels really good, and then we want to do it more, right? Visioning and dreaming, it feels good. So that's what we want to tap into. So what could we do to make that a part of our, lives, maybe on more of a regular basis? Do you have anything that you can share with us that would really help us, like an exercise or a tip of how we can do that every day, or at least a couple times a week?
Yes. Well, I think, Melissa, at a deeper level, it's really about giving ourselves permission for two things. One is to be curious, and two, to start asking good questions. That is really activating curiosity and asking good questions activates our mind to seek out possibilities. And so we can do that in a number of ways. There are certainly exercises like vision boards. Meditation is good about, allowing your mind to visualize in a relaxed state. Often people will go out into nature and they feel inspired by that energy. Sometimes our dreams are very rich in information about what's important to us and gives us guidance to how to move forward. So there are any number of ways in which our soul will speak to us and inform us as soon as we give ourselves permission. And that is really about allowing ourselves to explore where we might not have considered before. And when we give ourselves that permission to be curious and to be open and to open our vision and, put aside the blinders of fear and check in with our conscious and our subconscious mind and say, what really is out there for me? And we begin to ask that and give our mind permission to go there. It is limitless in terms of what might be revealed to us, and often very, very surprising sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. And that leads me to a question that I know that you've talked about before is so let's say we have our dream or we have our vision and we're going in that direction. But it seems like there's no one supporting the changes that we want to make to make a better life for ourselves. So how do we deal with that?
If we do not feel that we have support in moving forward, I think it's important for us to look at the present experiences and relationships that we've attracted to ourselves. Because it says something about where our energy has been functioning, because our lives are always a manifestation, right, of what our energy has brought to us from the past.
Right, exactly.
So if we understand that and we say, okay, obviously I have attracted experiences, I've attracted people to myself that are not supporting me, we can then very intentionally set a thought, a focus, an affirmation to the universe and say, I really want to call into my life people and experiences that are in alignment, not only with my dream, but my dream as it is an expression of my soul's blueprint. And when we do that, when we bring in and we call in those resources, the universe responds to us in like kind.
Right. That's so true. And that's what I try to reiterate when I talk about with postcards and in my book, right? Whatever is in our lives is what we have attracted. And that is from, where your thought process was before. So if you're in a place in your life where you're making these incredible changes and everyone around you is not supporting you or giving you obstacle or trying to put obstacles in your path, well, first off, a lot of people don't like when we change. That's something that I think you need to make a little mention about that, because I have noticed that people like us a certain way, and when we start to change, it really upsets the apple cart. So can you share a little bit about that?
That is a very common experience for people, particularly if they are making radical changes. People, for example, who are recovering, there are people around them may say, oh, we really want, you to stop drinking or gambling or whatever it is. But then when they actually do it, they discover that some of those people that might have encouraged them in that way don't know how to relate to them. They don't know how to connect with them. And so it's very, very common. And it's a scary thing for us as humans, because part of our survival instinct is to belong to the tribe, right? That's just built into us, that we want to belong. And so when we make changes and those around us see those changes and are uncomfortable, we need to know that it's very likely that what's happening is that a door is opening for new, more supportive, understanding relationships to come into our lives. I totally get that 100%. It's interesting how that happens. People get very uncomfortable when we start making changes, right? Well, yes, and when you actually start raising the bar in your own life, when you start living a higher quality of life, if you have been around people who are not living in that same way, they can often be put off by that, or even jealous or envious of that, and resent that you're making those changes. And that's hard when that happens, but it's so important to not allow their fear to interfere with continuing to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You cannot let other people stop you from making those changes that you know is going to make your life better. You can't. You have to have strong boundaries around that. So we're coming up to our second break, and when we come back, I want to talk about why our old habits are so difficult to break. And new habits are so difficult to start. And, what are some of the biggest obstacles that we face to becoming freed from the stuck? So stay tuned, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
All right.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. I have guest Susie Hayes on. So Susie, before we were talking about not allowing others to hinder our journey of trying to make some new and lasting and positive changes. And I want to talk about our own habits that seem to maybe impede on us and becoming freed from stuck. So why is it that old habits are so hard to break and new ones are hard to instill?
It's a really good question, and part of what is so important for us to appreciate is that habits are designed for our own preservation, our well-being. And we often develop those patterns out of what we know at that time to kind of manage it the best we can. And when we come to a point where we realize that a pattern is working against us or no longer serving us, then we make a decision to try something different. Mm-hmm. What causes us to retreat back is that our brains are designed to store those habit patterns so that we can retrieve them quickly. And we don't always appreciate that, in fact, those patterns never leave our psyche. They never leave our brain. And that's important to appreciate because they're always there as default. So when we are stressed, when we are in grief, when we are in trauma, any intentional negative emotional state, we are going to be more vulnerable to returning to those patterns. So we just need to know they don't go away. So what really is important to know is that in establishing a new pattern, a new habit, it must happen over a period of time long enough that it feels easier to do that pattern. It feels more familiar to do that pattern than the old pattern. But it's really important to be compassionate with ourselves and realize that it's not uncommon to default back, especially when we're stressed.
Yes.
So we're constantly working with that dynamic inside of ourselves.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because it's true. Because it's interesting. I've talked about this on other shows before. I used to smoke cigarettes for years, and I gave it up. And then after, and it's been years, right, since I've given it up. And as soon as I found out that my sister passed away, the urge to buy a pack of cigarettes was so strong that it was like, it was crazy, like the way that it just came on me, you know? And I'm glad you mentioned that we always have those because that was an old habit, right? I used to do, especially when I was stressed. And it came on so strong out of nowhere. And I was like, really? Still, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And so we need to understand that that's not unusual. That's not something that's dysfunction inside of us. That's just how our brain stores information.
Now, they say that, I've heard somewhere that they say it takes like 21 days to establish a new habit or 30 days. Do you have any science behind that, or do you have any, like, how long does it take for us to really create these new habits?
The research, honestly, is conflicting. And what I say to people is it doesn't really matter. It's however long it takes for you to make the change.
Right.
And you know, part of it is also how emotionally charged it is, Melissa, because, for example, if you were diagnosed tomorrow with cancer, you would make radical changes in your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you would do it immediately without conflict, right? You would make those changes. Yes. And no one would have to say, well, it's going to take you 21 days to do this. No, you would make it because it is so emotionally intense and there's such high investment that you focus and you make the changes. By the same token, I say to people, when you're thinking about making a change, what's so important is to think about what is the next most simple step. What is the next action, the most simple step you can take to move toward change? It could be picking up a phone and calling someone. It could be starting to do research. And one of the greatest challenges is we can get caught into the process of resource gathering and never take action. And so it's really about what is the next action, the most simple step of action I can take that will move me in the direction that I want to go. Yeah,
because I mean, you don't want to be diagnosed with, if we're using health habits, for example, you don't want to be diagnosed with cancer to make those radical changes, right? So we want to, but you're totally inspired to make all the changes that you have to get your body to heal. So is there a way that we can incite that kind of energy without having the trauma that sort of pushed us that way? Is there like something we can do that would get us super excited about making these changes?
I would say that the recognizing of the destination, the vision that we have of where we want to go is where our fuel comes from. But the reality is that in moving toward a change, very often it is really about commitment to an effective strategy that may not necessarily just feel super cool every day. Right? You know, and we have to recognize that sometimes it is just the consistency of the commitment and saying, you know, today I'm going to get up 10 minutes early and I'm going to do meditation, whatever it is that we want to add to our life. And we simply make that commitment, and then we do it to the best of our ability, knowing that it's not likely we're going to do it every day as we might idealize, but that we really do the best we can. And each time we take a step in the direction of where we want to go, that we honor that, we feel gratitude for that, we appreciate that, we celebrate that in ourselves, and that we acknowledge that, yes, I am moving my life forward in alignment with my soul's intention and purpose. And when we do that, we continue to just take the steps across the bridge.
Take the steps across the bridge. Okay, so then what is the greatest obstacle to becoming freed from stuck?
Most simply, it would be fear.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Fear. And again, it can be tied in with those beliefs that we have picked up along the way about whether or not we deserve to cross the bridge. But it foundationally is about fear. And so our task is really to move to the truth of love and to say, no, I know in my heart that this is mine to have. And sometimes we just have to thoughtfully, deliberately return ourselves to that truth.
Okay. Yeah, fear makes sense. I think that's why a lot of us don't take those steps that we know we need to take because we are afraid. Yeah, so fear. That makes a lot of sense to me. So how can we plan an effective strategy for sustained change?
It has to be something that is going to be very often structured in such a way that we can create it in our lives with the greatest amount of ease. And by that I mean sometimes we can connect a new habit with an already established habit. So, for example, we brush our teeth every day, and then we say, but you know, what I really want to do is I want to floss my teeth consistently. Well, you're not going to put that on your schedule when you're taking a coffee break, right? You're going to floss right after you've brushed your teeth. So if you can connect behaviors with behaviors that are already established, it's much easier. You just link it in. And so you add, oh, yes, I want to do this every day. So I connect it that when I brush my teeth, then I'm going to floss my teeth. And then you start to cultivate the pattern of incorporating that new change in with an established pattern.
Oh, yeah. So you connect it to something you're already doing, and that helps you build on that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So because I have this, I know a lot of people have this inner chatter. You know, it doesn't stop, right? The mind doesn't stop. So how does our mindset and our inner chatter affect our ability to become freed from stuck?
Well, our inner chatter can either be a benefit or it can be a distraction. And I think you're referring to the inner chatter that is a distraction,
yes,
where we ruminate over and over and over about the same thing.
Right.
And,
yes.
You know, what I do often with people, I will ask them to stop and slow down the conversation. And what we often discover is that there are different parts of ourselves that are in conflict, that are trying to figure out the issue. And so if we can, I call it like holding an internal board meeting, or, you know, you can, where you have the parts of yourself sit down in an internal conversation, and the wise, clear part of ourself mediates that conversation and allows those parts of ourselves to speak. And we really listen, because every part of ourself, even that is in conflict, is trying to speak up with the intention of helping us. So even when parts of ourselves seem to be sabotaging or destructive, the intention of that part is not that. The intention of that part is really self-preservation. So if we can have a conversation with those parts of ourselves, like that part of us, for example, that tends to be critical, if we can have a conversation with that part and really understand what that part is believing, what its intention is in its criticism, then we can actually have a direct internal conversation with that part to be able to understand it, to be compassionate, and sometimes to even instruct that part of ourself to that we appreciate what they're trying to do, but that they really need to calm down, because we've got it. We've got a plan. We've got a strategy. And sometimes we have to have those internal conversations with those parts of ourselves that get stirred up, because it's about anxiety. It's when we're experiencing that kind of turmoil. It's about it's a signal that we're not at peace with something. So we need to stop and listen to whatever that chaos is. And then we need to say, okay, I understand the concern, I understand the intent, and now this is how I'm going to handle it. And so I appreciate your input, but I need for you to calm down and be quiet for me, because I've got this. And it's about trusting inside of ourselves, about that we are able to make good and wise choices in our life.
Yeah, definitely. I tell myself, okay, I heard you. Got it. All right, let's move on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we only have a couple of minutes before we have to wrap up, and I know you talk that it's never too late to change, so I just want people to hear that. It doesn't matter where you are, how old you are, so can you just touch on that?
Oh, sure. Right now, I have clients all the way from 16 years old to 83.
I love that.
And me too. I love it because a 16-year-old has such a different perspective of life than an 83-year-old. But their focus of what they want to change in their life and how they want to become freed from stuck is different, because the 16-year-old is looking into the future and wanting to plan. Often someone who is older is wanting to come to terms with certain things in their life before they transition. They want to heal relationships. And so they're very eager, because they're aware of time, that they want to do what they can do to make changes so that they can be at peace in their own life.
Yeah, I love that you have an 83-year-old client. That's so great. I love it.
It is.
So, Susie, tell everybody the best way for them to reach out to you, connect with you if they want to.
The easiest way is actually to just go to freedfromstuck.com. That will take you to my website. You gave my other website address, but just say Freed from Stuck, and That will take you to my website. There, if you're interested in doing a consultation, I do a 45-minute consultation at no charge. And if you want to know more about resources, my book is on Amazon, but the website is really the portal to all of the resources I can provide for you.
Oh, thank you, Susie, so much. And everyone, thank you for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. And I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.